We're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2016 Global Dialogue on Waste. My name is Ranjit Annipu, and I'm an environmental consultant and also a co-founder of Be Waste Wise. This is the fourth consecutive year for the Global Dialogue on Waste, and when we started Be Waste Wise, we wanted to connect people who are looking for solutions with those who can provide them or guide them in finding those solutions. And we're proud that the experts that we brought together over the past 3 years and the knowledge that was created is now considered as a resource base. Our community grew by 80% last year, and we recently crossed the 10,000 views mark on YouTube. And we could definitely do better with marketing and, most importantly, your help. For today's discussion, I'd like to thank Lisa Boyle, Arlene Blum, Stacy Malcolm, and Abigail Barrows for making it possible. And Dianna Cohen of Plastic Pollution Coalition is the curator for this theme on oceans and plastic pollution. In today's panel and throughout the Global Dialogue on Waste, we're bringing some of the best minds together to explore the role of managing wastes in improving well-being. I don't have to remind you how important oceans and their health is to well-being. If you have any questions or comments, please use the hashtag WasteDialogue or hashtag PlasticPollutes to tweet them. You can also use the live chat window on the website www.wastewise.be. Thank you again to the moderator, Lisa, and the panelists. And Lisa, please take it from here. Thank you.
Sure. Hello, I'm Lisa Kaas Boyle. I'm an environmental attorney, and I'm a co-founder of Plastic Pollution Coalition. I am proud to gather these esteemed panelists today. My involvement with plastics goes back 20 years, and most recently, I was the co-author of legislation to ban plastic microbeads in consumer products, which was signed by Obama in December of 2015. And now I'd like to introduce you to our esteemed panelists. Let's begin with the great mountaineer and great environmental scientist, Arlene Blum.
I'm so delighted to be part of this. Thank you for including me. Did you want me to say a little more about plastic and toxics?
Arlene, I'd love for you to give a brief bio and discuss how you're related to the study of plastic pollution.
Well, I'm a mountain climber, as Lisa said, and actually way back in the 70s, after a friend who was an early environmentalist tragically died on a high mountain in the Himalayas, I wanted to do something for public health, learned about flame retardants in kids' pajamas, learned that they were toxic, got into the children, and in those days we did research showing this, wrote a paper in Science, and 3 months later they were removed. And so flame retardants have been my entree to plastic pollution because plastic cases that are around televisions, around electronics, are often as much as 20% by weight toxic flame retardants. So when you get the little bits of plastic, you're also getting 20% flame retardants. And these flame retardants have been shown in literally hundreds, thousands of studies to cause a wide range of adverse human health effects. Do you want me to get into that detail or later on?
We'll come to that in a question. And now, Stacy Malcolm, could you please introduce yourself? Stacy?
I think Stacy's on mute.
I was on mute. Here I am. Thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy to be with you here today and with all of you. I'm Stacy Malcolm, and I'm currently, my latest project is I co-founded and I'm co-director of a group called US Right to Know, usrtk.org, and we're researching and reporting on things that the food industry doesn't want us to know about what's in our food. I recently wrote an article posted yesterday on Huffington Post about synthetic biology, which is a new form of genetic engineering that's making its way to our food with no regulations, no transparency, no safety standards. So prior to that, my work has been primarily with the beauty industry and with cosmetics, done tons of research into personal care products, working with a coalition of groups. I was a co-founder of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. We started that in 2002, so about 15 years. And I wrote a book called Not Just a Pretty Face, The Ugly Side of the Beauty Industry. So I'm going to be talking today about the huge plastic problem that the beauty industry has and how we need to give them a makeover.
Thank you so much. And now we'll hear from Abby Barrows introducing herself.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy to be on this panel with all of you. So I'm the principal investigator on a global microplastics initiative with adventure scientists. And the project is studying the sources, composition, and distribution of microplastic pollution in fresh and marine waters around the world. Adventure Scientists is a nonprofit organization that addresses some of the world's most pressing environmental issues in which access to physical data is crucial to resolving them. So we leverage the skills of the outdoor community to gather data in difficult to obtain locations in any scale and in any environment. So we've had over 2,000 water samples collected worldwide for this project, and more coming in every day.
Wonderful. And now we'll begin with the questions. Plastic impacts our health directly when we use it as intended, and indirectly when it enters the environment as plastic pollution, and it becomes part of our food chain. Abby, can you please speak about this?
Yeah, so the ever-increasing problem of plastic pollution is really complex. Plastic production continues to increase annually, and we don't really see that slowing down. So effectiveness of waste management systems around the world vary greatly, and because of the increased production and our sort of leaky waste system, plastic contaminants are throughout our oceans and freshwater systems globally. To date, passive and active ingestion of plastics and microplastics has been documented in hundreds of species and can cause a range of adverse effects. For those of you who don't know what microplastics are, they're classified as pieces of plastic that are less than 5 millimeters in size, so little tiny pieces. We still don't quite understand the community level and ecological significance of microplastic and plastic ingestion. So microplastics are often accumulating in shallow coastal habitats, and this is also where juvenile stages of most aquatic organisms occur. And this is particularly affecting the eggs, embryos, and larval stages of aquatic organisms because they're particularly vulnerable to waterborne pollutants owing to their limited ability to regulate their internal environment. So a recent study showed that exposed fish, perch, that were exposed to microplastics at ecologically relevant concentrations and sizes of plastics, so that's about 7,000 to 10,000 pieces of plastic per meter cubed. That's the average that we're finding in coastal habitats off of Sweden. So that's a lot of plastic. But that study showed that there's a decreased hatching success and higher predation due to microplastics ingestion. And the larval fish preferred microplastics over the phytoplankton and other food sources that they normally would select for. A similar study in oysters found similar results as well, so a negative impact on oyster health and overall reproduction rates. So the connection to human health is still not very well understood, but we know we consume these animals that are consuming plastic. We need more research to better understand how microplastic ingestion by seafood and how humans consume seafood is affecting our health, and also how the chemicals in plastics that plastics are made with and that they accumulate while they're in the environment, I think Arlene can speak to this a bit more, are affecting the short and long-term health of humans and all the other animals that are affected by plastics.
And Abby, in addition, using plastic directly is impacting our health. For instance, through consuming water through plastic water bottles, the estrogenic properties of the plastic itself when we're using it as intended is also a human health hazard, correct?
Absolutely. And there's still definitely needs to be a lot more research done on this. But everyone now is aware of BPA because of all the media around BPA, and unfortunately, BPA has been replaced with something that is similarly, potentially as negative to our health, and also has the potential to be leaching into our food, from beer cans to canned food liners, plastic water bottles that might be a little bit of UV degradation. All of these things have been shown to have been tied to negative health effects in humans.
Thank you so much, Abby. Stacy, is plastic in our personal care products, and in our makeup, and how does this impact our health?
So yes, as I mentioned, the cosmetics industry has a huge plastic problem with, of course, over-packaging everything in plastic, tiny plastic bottles, millions of tons of waste. But there are two examples in particular with plastics and cosmetics that I think really point out the insanity of our materials economy. That's how I think of it, just the insanity of a system that where incentivizes, ever-increasing profits and corporations to find new ways to sell us stuff we don't need, regardless of impacts to health and the environment. So, two examples. One, the microbeads. Actually insane. We just heard from Abby some of the science showing that microbeads harm fish, and we don't know how they impact humans. I would disagree that we even need to study it more. We just need to get rid of this stuff. Companies are putting microbeads into face lotions to exfoliate, into toothpaste. I mean, basically, people are rubbing plastic beads on our face to clean them, putting them on our teeth. Dentists have found plastic beads in people's teeth, in their gums, of course, getting in our bodies, getting into fish. It's crazy. Why? Thank you, Lisa, for co-authoring the legislation that banned insane microbeads, and that's really such a good and hopeful sign that we still can make policy changes that make a difference. And thank you also to Story of Stuff and Five Gyres, Steve Wilson. I mean, it was an incredible example of activism making positive change fast. And it gives me great hope, so thank you. The second example I want to talk about disturbs me even more, and this is the example of children's bath products. And we've done studies at the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics looking at a whole bunch of top brands of children's bath products. We sent them to a lab. We found that many of them contain carcinogens, chemicals known to cause cancer, formaldehyde, and also 1,4-dioxane, which is a probable human carcinogen. When we were doing this study, I also went and looked at all the products. I've literally gone to stores and looked at every single plastic bottle in a personal care product to see what types of plastic that companies are using. Most of it's 1 and 2 recyclable type plastic, which doesn't have many known toxicity problems. But some of the products, and I only found this few examples to show. This is, I take Dora the Explorer with me when I speak to, because I think she in particular really embodies the insane materials economy. She's made out of PVC plastic, which is the worst type of plastic from an environmental and health perspective, made in places like Louisiana's Cancer Alley that are polluting the air with dioxins, with known carcinogens, hurting people. This is known. Also creates dioxin when it's incinerated. You can't recycle it. And it also needs toxic additives to mold it into shapes like Dora. And those additives being, we found lead and cadmium in PVC products, and also phthalates are known phthalates are the chemical that they use to mold PVC plastic into shapes. Phthalates have a long history of science showing that they're linked to reproductive harm, particularly in boys, birth defects of the penis, testicular tumors, lowered sperm counts, etc. And yet phthalates are in plastics that we use and put on our bodies and in the products themselves. So the packaging is bad, the chemicals inside the product are known to cause cancer. We found formaldehyde, 1,4-dioxane in this product. Also has fragrances and lots of things we don't know because we didn't test for every chemical of concern. And children's bath products also do commonly contain a warning that they can cause urinary tract infections with prolonged exposure. So that just goes to show you, I mean, what kind of system allows companies to put known carcinogens in the bathtub with babies when it's not necessary on any level? None of the toxicity of this product is necessary. I also have an example of also PVC, also has formaldehyde, also has 1,4-dioxane. When I dragged these products out of the bin this morning, my son, of course, like, was completely fascinated with this, and he wanted to touch it, and I found these on the stores at the bottom shelf where kids will find them, insist that their parents buy them. You know, and this is a Disney product. We have to demand that these companies do better. We have to look at labels, look at the bottoms of plastic, and make sure that products that you're buying your kids or buying at all don't have number 3 PVC plastic. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm glad we'll get to talk about the solution later, but the beauty industry certainly needs a makeover, as does the plastic industry and the entire economy.
Wow, thank you so much, Stacy. Dora the Explorer should be named Dioxin the Explorer, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's a good one. I'll use that.
Terrifying. Okay, and now I'd like to turn back to Arlene Blum to talk about plastic carries its own toxins, but it's also a vector for other toxins in the environment. Arlene, can you tell us about the chemicals in plastic and how flame retardants and other chemicals become part of the plastic pollution problem?
So it turns out, unfortunately, that flame retardants are a very lucrative thing for the chemical industry to sell, and they often are used at high levels where they do not even provide a fire safety benefit. And a good example of this is around the cases of televisions. The plastic around TVs is treated with flame retardants. 20% of the weight of the plastic is a toxic flame retardant. It's all to protect against candle fires. And I want you to try to imagine how you're going to have a candle fire in your TV unless you hold your candle to the TV for a long time, which is not what anyone who's very bright would do. But nonetheless, there's a strong push from the flame retardant industry to make as much plastic as possible flame retardant, and that makes it much more toxic and less recyclable. A lot of plastic at least can be recycled, but once you put flame retardants in it, there's almost nothing to do with it because you can't recycle it, and burning it produces dioxins. And they are the most toxic chemicals, the most persistent around. So the addition of flame retardants to plastic is a very bad thing and makes the plastics more toxic. And I just have to say, back when you were talking about bisphenol A and the, quote, regrettable substitution, Bruce Hammack is a chemist at UC Davis, toxicologist at UC Davis who studies bisphenols, and he likes to shock people. So he goes around saying, well, I like to find water bottles that say they have bisphenol A in them because then I know they don't have bisphenol S, which is worse. So unfortunately, and we really don't want bisphenol A to Z in our water bottles, and we don't want plastic that uses these things in our water bottles. So it goes beyond that. So anyway, we actually work on whole families of chemicals. We think that there is a real, with chemicals, a regrettable substitution problem where you go from bisphenol A to bisphenol S. When a toxic flame retardant is banned, you get one atom changed and you get an almost similar flame retardant. And we think that for flame retardants, you should have to prove there's a benefit before you use them, and then you want to use families of chemicals that really are safe, or again, alternative solutions rather than covering your whole with plastic to protect against candle fires, which are very unlikely. You can put the power source in a small metal box outside the TV, and then you don't need any any chemicals in the plastic, or better yet, you make your TV case out of metal and then you don't need any plastic at all. So I think we want to look beyond plastic to other kinds of solutions. And I think plastic isn't going to go away, but its use could be minimized to cases where it really is the best solution, and other solutions that don't have the same potential for human health and environmental harm should be considered first, and plastic used when it's really essential. And as we've said, we have no need for plastic microbeads. And you know, when you held up that nice doll, Stacy, it made me think of what was next to me on the shelf that I thought I would share with you. So this is a little bottle from the Gyre. I don't know if people can see it. So when I joined the Plastic Pollution Coalition, someone gave me this bottle of Gyre water, and you can see what it looks like. And that is the impact of plastic pollution. So I thought I would share it with people.
Thank you so much, Arlene. So what you just said about families of chemicals and substituting one poison for the other really brings up the problem of chasing poisons and the problem with our whole system of capitalism in America with no protections about what gets to consumers, and the fact that we export these toxins all over the world, and we export plastics to places all over the world that have absolutely no capacity to recycle to handle this waste problem that we're exporting. I really would like to talk about how we should prioritize science, education, and legal policy in the battle to prevent plastic pollution. What are we doing well and what needs to improve? And I think that Arlene has really touched upon something red hot here, which is, do chemicals, should they be innocent until proven guilty, like people are in our legal system, or should corporations have the burden of proof to show that their chemicals are safe before they experiment on us humans? So I'm going to turn over that question to anybody who wants to talk about it, and basically talk about how we need to prioritize legal policy, science, and education to really combat this problem, because as Stacy says, it's increasing every year. So whatever we're doing right now is not working. Go for it, somebody.
Big questions. Arlene, you go first.
Well, I'll try. I mean, that really is a big systematic question. And so I'll tell you the answer that we have is we think there's certain families of chemicals that really are guilty and would need to be proven innocent. And they contain many of the bad actors in our products, and many of them are used in plastic. And indeed, we encourage whoever can not to use any chemicals in these whole families. So as we said, best to use not use bisphenol A and S, but just not to use bisphenol A to Z. That bisphenols are very likely to be harmful, and I think they need to be considered guilty. And maybe someday, somewhere, there'll be a healthy bisphenol, but we need proof. Phthalates are a similar chemical. We can do without phthalates. Flame retardants. Just to say, when you have carbon bonded to chlorine, bromine, or fluorine, that's a really strong bond, so those kinds of molecules last a really long time. If it's bound to fluorine, they last a million years, never go away. And there are no naturally occurring chemicals in any mammals that have those bonds, so our bodies don't know how to deal with them. So there's something called the Stockholm Convention that bans 22 chemicals globally. Been signed by 170 countries, not the US, but others. And all the chemicals banned under the Stockholm Convention are ones with carbon bonded to fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. So those sorts of chemicals, they're flame retardants, they're antimicrobials. Antimicrobials are another huge problem in water and in fish. They're fluorinated chemicals. And most of these chemicals, like microplastics, are not removed by sewage treatment plants. So they go through our sewage treatment plants, they end up in our sediment, and they go up the marine food chain. So we think chemicals in these particular classes should only be used if they could be proven safe, and probably just shouldn't be used, that we really need to think about alternatives. And I have to say, some good news is that we are educating people about classes, and that includes purchasers, big purchasers, and they are making decisions not to purchase products with these whole classes. So that's kind of our approach, is a class approach to, with the worst of the worst, to just stop using them.
Right. Abby, can you talk to where you see research, education, and legal policy in the combating of plastic pollution, and how would you use those three strategies?
Yeah, so I think we absolutely need to adopt all three. We can't leave one behind in the interest of moving forward with two others. I think that source reduction and cleanup strategies are driven through education, but also having science inform both policy and have a positive feedback into education. Without research, we don't really know what the major problems are, and then we can't tackle it through public education and also through talking to our legislators. And if people aren't educated about the issue, they're not going to care enough to vote for it in state or federal bills and bans. So I think that all three need to be given equal weight and really move forward on all fronts with all three of those mechanisms for reducing plastic pollution.
Right. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to get to...
Lisa, can I add my 2 cents on that question?
Yes.
Because I just want to say, in follow-up to both what Arlene and Abby just said, we have the policy solutions. You know, what Arlene's talking about, banning whole classes of chemicals, restricting them, required substitutions, waste reduction. I would also add full transparency across the board so people know what they're buying, companies know what they're buying from suppliers, and also transparency in science and education. Who's funding science? Who's funding education? We have the policy solutions. What we don't have is a political movement to make it happen. And so what you said earlier, what are we doing well and what aren't we doing well, I just wanted to say I think we're doing incredibly well at moving the market. People are waking up. They're changing their purchasing decisions en masse. And corporations and the industries are really struggling with this right now. We've seen it in the beauty industry. We're seeing it in the food industry. Massive changes, almost daily. Companies changing the way they've made their products for decades because consumers are demanding it. And that's awesome. And it's mostly women and young people. So how do we turn that into a political movement? How do we take that to Washington, D.C. and demand changes that are absolutely people want across the political spectrum, but yet we can't make happen? So that's what I want us to think about, too, as we go through this and figure out how we can turn our networks into political movements that are unstoppable, because I think we can and I think we have to.
Excellent point, Stacy. And I would like to point out that America is really behind in terms of getting toxins out of our products. In Europe, they have the precautionary principle where chemicals are actually guilty until proven innocent. And so there are multinational corporations that sell one product in America and one product in Europe because our laws do not protect us from these toxic chemicals. So I think that Americans really deserve the right to know, as you said, and the right to be protected from known harmful chemicals. And it does take a political movement. Thank you for pointing that out, Stacy. I would like to ask all of you now to become lawyers, or even better, to become President of the United States for one moment, and you get the opportunity to sign any piece of legislation that you want, one piece, to impact health from plastic pollution. And so each of you, give me what your law is that you're going to sign, put your signature on to protect us from the ill impacts of plastic pollution. Go for it, Abby.
That's a hard one. There's so many things that I would want to do. And especially hearing Arlene and Stacy talk about, the chemicals are something I've been well aware of. But since my focus has been plastics, which are closely partnered with chemicals, I still see the overall impact of banning all single-use plastic, from straws to medical waste. I mean, the amount of medical waste that we use, we rely so heavily on plastic, to doggy poo bags, just cutting all of that out. No more styrofoam containers, no more takeaway containers. And I think that would be what I would do if I had a moment on the hot seat, to really try to implement change that would also inspire people to be more creative, to think about alternatives, and to be thinking more about our environment as we move forward as consumers.
Okay, excellent. Next up.
I have so many answers to this, but I can only pick one. I'm going to say I would sign a law that would dismantle the power of corporations and rebuild democracy. I get to that. I was wavering between that and banning all single-use plastic, so I have to just also speak to that, because it's made an incredible difference just to ban plastic bags, in the Bay Area, for example. Behavior is changing overnight. So laws really make a difference, and we absolutely need them. And even simple, single things can make huge sea change. So we need those kinds of laws, but we also need to get fundamental about how do we truly bring back, recreate, create democracy in this country, and stop this insanity of corporations writing the laws that benefit them to be able to sell whatever they want, no matter the cost. It's not good for the economy or for health and the environment, because we have companies, as you were saying, Lisa, that are making products that are less safe than they already know how to make, because they're making them in other countries. These are the products people around the world want to buy. So I think that we could truly be leaders in creating a new, green, safe, life-based economy, but we absolutely have to have a democracy in place to do that.
Wow, that's a good point, Stacy. It may be that campaign finance reform is the secret to all of our problems, because when corporations get to write laws and determine our fate because of their financial interests, it really is dangerous and a conflict with democracy and with public health. Arlene, what is your law?
Well, after considering things that might reduce consumerism, which I think we don't all need more things with more chemicals, and indeed probably we don't need more people to use more things with more chemicals. And I really liked bringing back democracy and campaign finance reform. I love all of those, but I'm going to do something a little radical and different. I'm going to put a huge tax on plastic, so that plastic costs 10 times as much, so that people really only use it when they absolutely need it, and that other 9 times that tax is going to go into research into true healthy alternatives, and to funding NGOs to bring back democracy, and into real education, to continue the story of stuff education, to really reduce consumerism, and radical, to really help Planned Parenthood and help things around reducing global population with all that 90% of what plastic costs to go to. We can come up with some other good uses for it too.
Wow, Arlene.
Arlene for president.
Arlene for president. I love that. That is so brilliant, because one of the fundamental problems is because of fracking, because of tar sands extraction, because of offshore drilling, we have a glut of fossil fuels, and it's so darn cheap that it is so inexpensive to put everything in plastic. And so, of course, it's increasing every year. And you're right, if you make it less attractive financially, maybe we will have less plastic packaging and single-use plastics, because it costs nothing for the restaurants to put plastic straws in every drink before you get it, because it's so darn cheap. Plastic is so cheap, but it's really not cheap. It's really expensive on our health and in cleaning up in the environment. It's horrible. Thank you so much. That was genius. Okay, now I would like to ask you all how you believe that citizens, each of us individually, while we're waiting for democracy to be reborn, what can we do as individual consumers and citizens to protect ourselves?
I think getting involved in local cleanups and just being more aware of what's happening in your town politics, and also voting with your wallet and not voting for plastics with your wallet and consuming less. I think that just being aware of how much we are consuming on a daily basis and how many people don't consider the long-term impacts of that. So I think as an individual, just getting more involved in your local actions, and just trying to be more self-aware. Use websites like Environmental Working Group to figure out what sort of chemicals are in some of your favorite products, and just become a more informed citizen. I mean, we're in the 21st century. We live in the United States of America. There's no real excuse for not having. We have the information at our fingertips for a lot of it. So making good use of that.
I can go next. I'm going to say 3 things. We need to get smart about what we buy, so just say no to toxic, ridiculous products like Dora the Explorer or children's bubble baths that have warnings that kids might get urinary tract infections if they sit in a bathtub with the chemicals. And just all of the products we use, looking at labels and just reducing and eliminating unnecessary chemicals and plastics wherever we can. So just get smart about what we buy. Lots of resources to do that. Number 2, get connected with each other. I think this is truly the transformative moment and opportunity, and why market campaigns and the market is changing so fast is because people are getting connected. They're looking to each other. Groups of women are looking to other women for what to buy and how to navigate these complicated questions, rather than just getting, advertised at. As we used to. And so it's an incredible opportunity to just share wisdom, keep talking to our communities, keep building networks, just keep standing up in our own circles to say what's right, and to give people tools and resources to make better decisions. Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, safecosmetics.org is great for learning about personal care products. EWG.org has lots of great info on food and cosmetics. Plastics Pollution Coalition, you guys are doing amazing work. Lots of great NGOs out there. And so get connected, and then number 3, get political. We have to take this fight to our local communities, our state communities, and to Washington, D.C. until we change the government of this country to bring back democracy and and change the economy in ways that support life, health, and people, not just profit. I mean, we basically need to recreate and reinvent the way we do everything. That's what I tell young people when I speak at colleges, and I love to say that because it's like that it's their life project. And I think that young people really do get it, and they give me great hope. So it's a great challenge, but a huge opportunity. Recreate the way we do everything to build an economy based on life and health and love.
Wow, well, that is hard to follow, but let me sort of repeat or change slightly some of the things. I mean, I think purchasing is very powerful, and the purchaser can decide what's in products. And so, as we've said, transparency is really important, that products have to say what's in them and that people take the time to read the labels, and certain things can be avoided. We work a lot with big purchasers to encourage them to use healthy products to come together. As you said, organizations. I think everybody should join the Plastic Pollution Coalition, for example, which will keep them informed. I forgot when I introduced myself to say that I'm the executive director of the Green Science Policy Institute, and on our website we have consumer information on reducing exposure to some of the worst families of chemicals, which is a way. We hear there are 80,000 chemicals out there, which just sounds overwhelming, like what can you do? But we think there are actually 6 families that contain most of the chemicals of concern, so one can learn some things and avoid them. And we all know everybody can stop the use of single-use plastics. And I remember when I once had the pleasure of visiting Dianna Cohen's home, she showed me her cabinet full of glass containers and metal containers, like no plastic. So I think ridding our lives of plastic can be an example, or reducing the plastic when we don't need it. So I think we can be an example, and I think educating children is really important, because once they're educated, they can keep an eye on their parents and they can educate others. So I think there's a big education component.
Excellent. So we've touched upon this a little bit, but we share globally the oceans. We're all connected. It's one big blue planet. So we also share commerce in a global economy. I'd like to ask you to think about, is plastic pollution a problem that is best solved locally or globally, or in combination? Give me your thoughts on local versus global in terms of solving plastic pollution. Anyone?
Well, I think that all of these problems are global, and that's really what science is showing us. We're all connected. The same chemicals running through the rivers are running through our veins. The plastic going into the ocean is in our bodies. I mean, nothing is more powerfully says we're all in this together, and we all have to take part of the responsibility and be part of the solution. I had my little nephew, who's 9, a few weeks ago we were drawing a picture of the planet, all the continents, and we drew the 7 continents, and he said, "You forgot one. You forgot to draw the plastic continent in the ocean." And I thought, oh my God. Well, that just stopped my heart, but also gave me great hope that children are seeing and realizing the depth of these problems. And so I think that we have to have these conversations with our kids and really acknowledge we don't have all the answers, but we really need to figure it out together.
Yeah, Stacy, I think that's such a good point. The problem is global, but I've found as an attorney that sometimes we can get something accomplished locally that perhaps the politics doesn't allow at a state level or at a national level yet. And so sometimes the change is incremental, and you get models, you get hope spots, basically, of legal protection, and then you export those legal protections and repeat, apply and repeat. So
absolutely. And you know, one good example, and just to Arlene's point, I love the policy prescription of the tax on plastic, the soda tax in communities. And you know, Berkeley passed a soda tax by like 70%. They spent millions of dollars, like per citizen, trying to beat it. And we passed the soda tax. And the soda tax is generating lots of money. It's changing behavior. It's been really powerful. So that's a great example of what you're talking about. Start local, make it bigger.
That's fantastic. So we're almost up with time. I'd like to give you each an opportunity to share what you're working on now and how people can stay in touch with you and to help you. I'll say that I am working on more legislation. I'm leading a group right now to come up with plastic straw legislation, because that's one of our main polluters on the beaches and getting into our oceans, and they're totally unnecessary, and they should at least be upon request only. So that's what I'm working on. Abby, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm still having adventures, collect water from around the world, and if you are traveling to some remote and hard to reach place, or if you're really curious about water somewhere near you, you can sign up to volunteer for the Global Microplastics Initiative on our website, which is adventurescience.org, and find your way to the microplastics page and click through the prompts there, and you can contribute to our project, which is working to solve this issue on a global and local scale.
I can go next. I'm working right now on bringing truth and transparency to the food system. So that's my main focus, working with US Right to Know, which is at usrtk.org, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at US Right to Know. I'm doing a lot of work on GMOs, the new generations of GMOs, pesticides in foods, and also sugar sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, and particularly the way that corporations are influencing science and academics and trying to shift the debate in this country to personal responsibility instead of regulations. So as always, trying in my personal life to buy better products, stop buying plastics. I'm really inspired by people like Dianna with glass in their cabinets, and I aspire and work toward that every day. And you can follow me on Twitter, Stacy Malcolm, and also on Facebook. And thank you all so much. I am really inspired by this group and so glad to have hung out with you today.
Arlene?
So we are mostly scientists who are trying to change policy and purchasing, and so we do a lot of work with scientists. So we go to big international meetings and have days of science and policy in addition to the days of science. So we reach out to scientists a lot. We also actually work a lot with big purchasers, educating them to make better choices in their purchasing, and we work with trade associations for retailers and manufacturers for transparency and to stop the use of these 6 classes of harmful chemicals. If people want to learn more about the 6 classes and how to avoid them, we have a website, 6classes.org, with 15-minute videos. And someone at Facebook, which is one of our big purchasers, said 15 minutes is too long, we need 3-minute videos. So in a few months, we hope we'll have 3-minute videos on the 6 classes. And our website is greensciencepolicy.org. I said that before. And we send out monthly newsletters about reducing toxics, reducing plastic. If anybody wants to hear from me once a month or once every 3 months, we also have quarterly versions. You can subscribe on our website or just send me, Arlene, at greensciencepolicy.org, an email, and we'll put you on our quarterly or monthly newsletter updates. And you know that old saying to think globally but act locally? I think that plastic is the classic example. It impacts the whole world, but we can start making a difference, like the plastic bag bans and the great legislation that you're doing really is starting to move the needle. And I'll just end with a very favorite analogy of mine, which as a mountain climber, I quite like. So if you want to imagine you're standing on top of the Matterhorn with the clouds at your feet, and it's very beautiful, and it's Mount Blanc, sorry. And the top of Mount Blanc is an unusual place because if you go straight down the mountain, you end up in France, but if you turn a step to the right, you'll end up in Switzerland, and if you turn a step to the left, you'll end up in Italy. It borders on 3 countries. So I also feel like we could be at a critical moment by locally taking a step in one direction or the other. We could go down the mountain and hopefully end up in a place with greatly reduced plastic and greatly reduced use of harmful chemicals.
Well, thank you. I hope we end up in Switzerland. Ranjit, are you taking it away now?
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion, Lisa and Abby, Arlene, and Stacy. Talking about all the chemicals, I'm a chemical engineer, and chemical engineering originates from something that's called alchemy, where people try to turn everyday base metals into gold. But now they couldn't do that. But chemical engineers did end up turning a lot of everyday materials into, wealth. Young generations, like Stacy was mentioning, do actually give me a great hope too. And I think a significant part of our future is turning all these harmful chemicals around us, which are everyday chemicals now, and turning them into something safer, not maybe gold, but something definitely safer for us. So thank you again for joining us today on the panel. And the next panel is next Wednesday, and we have panels all the way until the end of September on different themes like consumption and climate change, making a case for waste, and the future of waste management. So thank you again for everyone, for joining us, and have a good day, good night, good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.